Now, last week, US Vice President Mike Pence invited a Messianic Jewish leader on stage at a rally to pray for victims of the Pittsburgh synagogue massacre. This decision shocked Jewish leaders who say the Messianic tradition, which embraces Jesus, is a form of Christianity, not Judaism. So how do Messianic Jews define their controversial faith? RN reporter Siobhan Hegarty met Australian members of the community.
In the historically Jewish suburb of Bondi Junction sits the bookstore Jews for Jesus. It's nestled between a cafe and an old-fashioned laundromat. According to the shop's website, best-selling items include anointing oil from Israel, 7 branch menorahs, and a book titled Whoever Heard of a Jewish Missionary? Bob Mendelsohn is the author of that book, but he's also the National Director of Jews for Jesus Australia. He's lived in Australia since 1998.
It's all in the title. We're Jewish people who believe that Jesus is the Jewish Messiah, but not only for the Jews, but for the world.
Christians believe Jesus is the forthcoming Messiah. Jews do not. And that's where Messianic Judaism stands alone from the pack. Its followers view Jesus as the Son of God and the Jewish Messiah. They also believe in the New Testament and see it as a complement to the Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh.
The Jews for Jesus organization began in 1973 with a handful of mostly ex-hippies in San Francisco who had come personally one by one to faith in Yeshua, faith in Jesus, and who wanted to not only identify with him, but with our Jewish culture. And we didn't give up being Jewish any more than an Australian who moved to Paris would give up Vegemite. We're still who we are.
While the Messianic movement gained prominence in the 1960s and 70s, Mr. Mendelsohn says its roots are far older.
Messianic Jews have been around since Jesus.
But Jews for Jesus isn't the only Messianic organisation in Australia. Les Aaron Gosling is the lecturer for the International Messianic Community of Faith. He lives on the Gold Coast, and he says the region's Messianic community is far more diverse than outsiders might think.
With this movement, which is international now, Jewish people can get together with Gentiles within the same framework of thought and live their lives out feeling more secure, you might say. But a lot of it is composed of Gentiles who want to identify with Israel or with the Jewish people.
So in terms of your community demographic, not everybody has a Jewish background.
No, that's right. And you'll find this in all the Messianic congregations around the world. There are perhaps more Gentiles than there are Jews.
In the coastal town of Port Macquarie, there's a small community of Messianic Gentiles. They go by the name of Ancient Foundation Bible Fellowship, and they promote Jewish beliefs and practices within a Western, non-Jewish context. Shannon Eads is a member of the group.
Another term is Hebrew roots. Gentiles that are going back to the Hebrew roots of their faith. Most of the Hebrew roots communities so far are only small. The backgrounds of all the people that are involved are from various church backgrounds, from Pentecostal to the more traditional Catholic, uniting Anglican church backgrounds. They've just all sense that there's more to what they've been experiencing in their religious walk.
Mr. Eads came across the Messianic movement 6 years ago. Since then, he's come to view the Christian Bible as a work of Hebrew Jewish people. But his practice goes deeper than beliefs. The Port Macquarie Fellowship mark the Sabbath every Saturday and, where possible, keep a kosher diet.
We don't eat any fish that don't have fins and scales, any pork products, and we don't eat any shellfish. So we try as much as we can to do that.
The fusing of Christian and Jewish beliefs doesn't sit comfortably with everyone. But Bob Mendelsohn says it's only extremists who have targeted Jews for Jesus.
Most Australians are very happy to allow someone who has a different belief to have their belief. It's all right. We've experienced some hostility. Our windows have been smashed at our bookshop in Bondi Junction. That really was a threat by certain, I want to say, extreme people, certainly not the mainstream of Jewish or Christian thought.
For Les Gosling, the alienation has been far more overt.
Around the period of Passover, if you want to get matzah and imported Israeli wine, the easiest way is to go to the local synagogue and purchase through their shop. But if they know that you are a Messianic, they will give you short shrift.
From the other side of the equation, have you received hostility from Christian communities?
Yes, I go to a Sunday worship service. I don't wear my yarmulke. I don't wear a skull cap. I don't wear the kippah because it just brings unwanted attention to me. I had a pastor and his wife asked me very politely to leave. So, you don't get the so-called Christian charity if you go in there. They see you as a threat.
Despite the confusion and discrimination that comes from Messianic Judaism, Mr. Gosling says his faith is entirely valid for Jews and Gentiles alike.
You can be a Buddhist, you can be a Hindu, you can be a gangster like Bugsy Siegel or Meyer Lansky, and you can be a one-worlder like I am Henry Kissinger, but I am not a Jew, and still be seen as Jewish and acknowledged as such. But if you believe in Yeshua as the Messiah, you are unceremoniously rejected and denounced and no longer considered a legitimate Jew, and it's entirely fallacious.
Siobhan Hegarty's report on that controversial group ending this week's edition of the Religion and Ethics Report.